Welcome to Restorative Yoga. So we're gonna need several soft things. So I have yoga bolsters, just really big pillows. If you don't have yoga bolsters at your house, you can easily replace them with some couch cushions or rolled up, like a rolled up quilt. Works really well. In fact, that's really all a bolster is a rolled up piece of batting or a folded piece of batting or a super big piece of upholstery batting with a cover over it. So if you've got any of things that sort of resemble it, you're welcome to use those. You can also use regular pillows and blankets and you'll just fill in any gaps or create a little structure wherever it's appropriate. Now we're gonna do a reclining butterfly pose. So coming back to butterfly pose, you can lie down flat on your back, or you can build up a little structure there. And I'm gonna do a little structure. So I'm gonna take a pillow and put that down, and I'm gonna take a little blanket for my head so that there's just a little tiny bit more support there. Now, anytime you're using support blankets or anything for your practice, make sure that they're fairly smooth. You don't want there to be any really harsh wrinkles in the blankets, because you'll feel those over time. You may not immediately, but as you hang out with the pose, you will feel like any pressure point is going to become really, really obvious. Okay, so then I'm also kind of rolling up a blanket. I'm going to put that underneath my legs. Now, the goal of restorative yoga is to relax. So we're going to put ourselves into these various yoga poses and then relax every muscle around them. The intention being more to sort of unwind any tension patterns that we might hold there than to stretch places. So we're not going for a really big stretchy sensation. With some poses and some bodies in that pose, there's sensation, period. But we're going for the most relaxed we can get. So as many pillows and blankets or other soft things, towels, whatever you've got that will support your body, the merrier. Use as many as you think is appropriate. Okay, so first for this one, because I'm using a pillow under my back, is to get that into a position where it feels the best to me. And sometimes I like the support to come all the way down to the top of my hip, and sometimes I like the support to be more like under just the ribs, and it really depends. And I might fill in, like the pillow might be too big to come all the way down here to the sacrum, but I might fill that in with a towel or something along that line. I'm gonna see as I go along here if I feel like that's gonna be appropriate. And then I've got this little extra bit of support that I'm putting just kind of behind my head and neck. And I don't want that to necessarily push my chin into my chest. I want there to be as close to whatever position we're in. We want the body to be able to relax in that position, right? The body should let go. So for me, if my chin is pressed into my chest, it's gonna overdo things on the back of my neck, and it'll be harder to relax. Similarly, if I don't have the support under my legs in where they are supporting this femur bone, hip socket joint right there, right? Then it's gonna feel like a little bit of extra stress on my inner thigh or my outer hip or even my low back. So just trying to find the right balance and take the time you need, because we're gonna hang out in this pose for like 8 minutes. first little bit of time here, once I get my body settled, is to just check in and make sure that I am, in fact, relaxing all my muscles. I find that I have, and maybe not everybody is like this, but I definitely find little places where my muscles are almost gripping my skeleton purely out of stress patterns, right? So mental stress creates all this physical tension. That's the stuff that I need to let go of. Now, sometimes the physical tension is there because my body's not actually comfortable. So there might be some small adjustments that I need to make. And I will know the difference because when I check back around, there will be like a little discomfort, just mild discomfort somewhere. Like right now, I'm just like gently changing my elbow position to try to find the best relaxed arm shape. Now we're trying to be still without holding still. So the notion is to relax into stillness. And if that's not happening yet, then you're not completely still yet, right? You might still be tweaking it a little. But no sense of like rigidly holding still, just letting stillness be happening. Or start happening as is appropriate. Ultimately, the body, as it breathes, is not completely still anyway, and we want to kind of give in to that. So I've just got a couple minutes left. And while I'm hanging out, I'm just sort of scanning through my body, just noticing where things are right now. I'm not necessarily judging it or trying to make it different, but just noticing. So I kind of do a little scan through of like, are both my feet the same? Do both my legs feel the same? Do both my hips feel the same? I'm just kind of going through, checking in. Sometimes one side will be carrying a little more tension. One side might be just slightly different in the way that it's aligned. It might just be a different level of sensation. It doesn't necessarily feel like there's a imbalance, as much as just you notice the right side more sensitively than the left, for example. I am projecting onto you all kinds of notions. It's whatever is there. Just giving examples. Yogis. So we're going to gently release the pose. Now I start just by straightening out my legs first. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm just going to pause there and notice the sensations left behind by the pose, which for me is mostly kind of a sort of light effervescent feeling in the inner thigh. And then as I hang out, I start to feel the pose in the outer hip and closer to the center. There's a lot of sensation with the inner. I'd say a lot. It's very subtle, but that's where the most of it is. How's that? Comparatively speaking, it's a lot. All right, so now I'm going to take the blanket out from underneath my legs. Set that guy off to the side for now. And then I'm going to get this pillow out from underneath my head and the blanket as well. Okay, now, with all the props set aside, now I'm going to let my arms have a moment. Sort of see where they landed. And you could do any kind of movement that feels good to you here. Generally, when I'm doing like restorative yoga or yin, I like to keep the movement sort of gentle and easygoing, but it's your practice. You should move whatever you think is the right way to do. So now that I've come off of both of the pillows, I'm sort of left with a little sensation in both the shoulders and my hips. That's kind of interesting just to check in with. Now, I've got my body positioned in a constructive rest, which means that the bones of my legs, these big femur bones, are settled into the hip sockets in a way that feels like they're not going to fall in or out if I let go with the muscle. All right, and basically my muscles are relaxed on my legs and they're holding themselves up, so that's ideal. It's also not pulling on my hips at all, so my pelvis is neutral. I've got a neutral curve under my low back and under my neck, so my chin is more or less level, so it's not tugging on my spine at all. So that's the position we want to start with here. We're going to do a release for the hip flexor on the right side first, then we'll do a pose, and then we'll come back to this position and do that whole thing again on the other side. So we're just going to do this movement pattern on one side to start with. So we're going to try to, as best you can, smoothly extend the leg and smoothly bring it back. If you can glide along the floor, fantastic. If that doesn't work out, then you'll just glide as best you can through the air, and when you get to either end with the leg all the way straight or the leg bent here, we'll just relax once we get there. So we're going to pick up the right toes and, to the degree possible, smoothly glide the legs straight out and just stretch through that. So If you had to pick your leg up a little bit to get it here, now you relax the leg and stretch through it. I'm kind of spreading out my toes. I'm imagining I can stretch all the way up to like the center of my low back. Maybe even up to the center of my rib cage. And then I'm gonna gently draw that leg back and let it rest once we get here. And so again, just stretching that leg out. I'm gonna rotate it outside now. So I've turned the whole leg to the right from the hip socket as far around as it wants to go. I'm still stretching my toes out, still reaching through that leg. And then I'm gonna bring it back and swirl it into place. Pick my toes up and stretch the leg out. And then I'm rotating inward as far as it'll go. So I'm turning from the hip, my whole leg bone, everything all included, inward, and I'm spreading out my toes and stretching through that leg. And there might be some new muscles that you can feel with these different positions. And then I'm going to draw that leg back in and let it rest. So we're going to repeat those 3 movement patterns. So starting with the toes straight up, extend out, stretch, come back and relax. Glide out, rotate out and stretch. Glide back and rest. Glide out, rotate in and stretch. Glide in and rest. Now, I feel different sensations in the hip that I'm doing this on compared to the other hip. But again, there's nothing that feels really intense. It's very nice. It's very easygoing. How's that? We're going to do those 3 patterns one more time. So stretching straight down the center. And back. I want this feeling kind of just heaviness to kind of return, at least an equal amount of heaviness on both sides, right? So extend the leg out, rotate out, stretch. Come in. So I don't want to feel like I'm leaning anywhere, right? So I've got the same amount on both sides. Okay, one more. Stretch it out. Rotate in and stretch. Now this is a really great way to release tension from your hip flexors and the kind of surrounding muscle that does these little movements with the leg. So if you just tend to carry stress or tension there, this is a really nice little pattern of movement just to put every day into your world. All right, so we're gonna do a spinal twist with this right side up on top. So I'm taking my legs to the left, and some people will wanna just let their legs rest on the floor. I know that I'm gonna want to fill in some space. So I've got a pillow here. I'm going to rest my left leg on the pillow, and then I'm going to kind of wrap my right leg around it so that it kind of hooks over the edge of that pillow and relax. And so that is the best way for me to relax through both legs. They sort of hook onto each other, and it doesn't feel like I have to hold them in place. Now this little spot right here on my low back, I like to fill that in. So I'm going to put a little blanket right in there, and that lets me sort of lean into the blanket a little bit so that my shoulder feels like it can relax more deeply onto the floor. Sometimes I have to fiddle with the angles until I get it just right. And again, I don't want there to be a huge amount of sensation. That's why I'm using the pillows. I'm not trying to drag my shoulder around. I'm not trying to drag my hip into a really deep stretch. I just want everything to be in this shape and then able to relax really deeply. And I like my head generally turned the same direction as my legs, but you can have yours straight up or turn it the opposite way. It's up to you. You'll just make a choice. Oh, there we go. Get my arm under the table. And then we're going to hang out. Now we're going to hang out with this guy for about 4 minutes or so. give or take 30 seconds. So take whatever time you need to set it up and then try to relax for that time. Again, once I get my physical body settled, I try to relax as deeply as I can. Every now and then when I do that, I find like, I could change that a little bit, and then I make that adjustment. And then, come back to being still. And by that, I mean, again, just relaxing into being still rather than holding still. Gonna finish up here in about 30 seconds, maybe 4 breaths or so left here. Again, when we leave any restorative pose, we come out as slow as as slow as you can. So all I'm gonna do to start with is just move this blanket, and then I'll take one more breath here. I'm sort of going to let myself just fall into the space left behind by a blanket. And then just stretch out for a moment and notice where that landed me. And for me, of course, there's some asymmetry now. One side was doing a different thing on the pose than the other side was. again, if you feel like you want to do some movement, you can do that. And we're going to just repeat those things on the opposite side. So eventually, when you're sort of feeling like you're done moving, you'll arrive in the constructive rest position, and then pause for a moment there and just notice the right side and the left side and see if there's any differences between the way the two sides feel. And then when you're ready, you'll take the left toes up and just glide that leg out. And again, stretching through that leg. Trying to keep the rest of my body relaxed, and then I'm just going to glide that back and rest. And then glide it out and rotate outward, however far around it wants to go. Sometimes I have a slightly different range of motion on my left side than I do on my right. Stretching out, but I'm going to do that again, going straight down the center, stretching, coming back, and then straight down, but then rotating outward and stretching, and coming back, and then straight out, and then rotating inward to stretch. And one more time, going straight out. Coming back. Going out and rotating outward to stretch. Coming back. And then one more, just going out and internally rotating. Oh, I could hold that one a little longer, I think. And then coming back. Oh, and then this is going to turn into the twist. So add the pillow. Filling in the space. All right, friends, we'll hang out with this guy for around 4-ish minutes or so. catch my mind sort of trying to work out something about the future, getting stuck in the past in some fashion, kind of rehashing old things. I can remind myself just to pause and notice the breath and notice the body. Remind myself to relax a little bit more deeply. So as much as possible, this also is a way of sort of forming a meditation, just around the shape of the pose. All right, yogis. So we're going to gently start to release this pose. I'm going to remove the blanket. And again, just sort of take up that space. And again, we may want to just pause for a moment here. Maybe you want to do some movement. So from here, we're going to come to a seated position. Definitely just slowly making my way to that seated position. Don't have to rush. I'm not in a rush. Oh. Now. Oh, once you get here, there might be some little movements that you want to do that were impossible to do on the floor. So you can do those things. And then we're going to do a forward bending shape. Now, I'm going to have my legs out straight, but not necessarily smack up against each other. It's going to be a relaxed position. Closer together than farther apart is what I'm going for, because I'm going to kind of try to go for, a kind of release of my whole back body. And so, I'm not going for a really strong sensation of stretch, but I'm going to try to feel that part of my body letting go into the shape, right? So I'm going to adjust my hips. Now, some people may want to sit up on the edge of a couple of blankets. For me, putting a blanket under the knees is really helpful. And then I'm going to sort of fill in this space. Now, it does not bother my back to be rounded a little bit. I don't have any low back issues in that way. But if you do, then it would be better to keep your spine sort of with the pelvis. So the pelvis might only tilt in a little bit, and then you'll just build up whatever space is here. Maybe even pulling a chair to you so that you can rest on the seat of a chair. For me, I just build a little prop mountain. So pillows, blankets, all the things, so that when I lean forward, I'm mostly filled in here. Now I have to build like a little space to breathe into, because this, I like having something so there's like little space right around my nose. It's easier to breathe. I just do that with a blanket. And the pillows. So just set yourself up in whatever's the most appropriate way for you to hang out with a forward bend. And again, we're going to stay with this guy for about 8 minutes or so. So if anything sort of nags at you, definitely take care of it. Those first couple minutes are definitely the minutes where if I'm gonna feel like things are gonna get really crazy, then they will. But generally speaking, at this point, if I don't have to do any adjustments, I can really start to sink into the pose. So just notice for you, like, are there little things that are still tugging at you, or things that are uncomfortable, and should you address those so that you can sink a little deeper in? my body sinks a little deeper into the shape. Sometimes have to make little adjustments just so that I keep the pressure points appropriate. Just kind of readjusting. You may have to do some little readjusting, and then when you're done, you just come back to being as still as is appropriate. Letting go and relaxing into it. And again, just hang out with your breath. I love noticing the way it feels in my back to breathe. Let the pose turn into a bit of a meditation. We just have a couple minutes left. So we're going to do about 3 more breaths here. I'm going to use an inhale to come up. So inhaling, letting myself sort of fill up that space. Inhaling, letting myself fill in that space. Now I want my knees to be bent. I'm going to get rid of all these props. Or at least set them off to the side. So we're going to do a version of a side bend, and that just kind of takes us over to the side. And we're just going to sort of fill in a little bit around the side of our waist. So you can use a pillow, you can use a blanket. I'm going to use this blanket. And sometimes I like to have a blanket underneath the side of my hip, because we're, that little bony protrusion there on the side of the hip, the femur bone. Sometimes that pokes into the floor. So I'm going to fill in that space. Now with this blanket, what I'm gonna do, well, first of all, I'm gonna fold it more neatly, but it's folded in half long ways. And then I'm gonna essentially roll it up, but I'm gonna fold it in half one more time before I roll it. Okay, so I'm gonna fold it in half the other way, like that. And then from the fringy end, because the fringes are a little uneven, I'm going to roll them up first. Now your blanket may not have fringe. Maybe you have a nice quilt or something like that. So whatever is appropriate, I'm going to kind of roll it like I would try to roll a sleeping bag to put it away. So kind of tight, sort of holding onto it, rolling it in that way. Now you can roll a looser blanket. And sometimes for me, like, as I roll it, there's some little lumpy spots. I'm just going to smooth those out in a second. Now this is going to go under the side of my waist. And one of the things that I like about a blanket is that it's a little bit more squishy. If you want it to be really, really firm, then a couch cushion or a pillow might be better. So it just depends on this props you've got. And this is nice and forgiving. I like the pillow sometimes too, so yeah, either way. Okay, so I'm going to put this guy down so that the side of my hip is going to rest on a little bit more padded surface. Again, if your floor is really squishy or on a really soft rug, you might not need anything like that. You might already have enough padding. Oh. And then this guy is going to go right under the side of my waist. So that it holds my rib cage just a little bit. So now I'm going to be kind of sloping over the side of it. So I need to make it just a tad bit lower. There we go. Okay, so now I've got a little side bend. Now, I can hang out with just my arm here for support, which is probably what I'm going to do. Or you could put a block underneath your head or another pillow to add some support there. So, I'm going to use my arm because that's about the right amount. And then this arm you've got up here, you know, you can rest it down your side. You can put it up front. I'm going to sort of see where I like it to go. You can have the legs completely straight, or you could bend them. One leg can be bent, one leg straight. So I like to do one of each. So the bottom leg I bend so there's a little more support. It doesn't feel like I'm going to roll front to back as much. So it gives me a little, like a base. And then I like the top leg straight so that I can kind of feel more of this side stretching, side bending kind of shape. Again, I'm not going for a really big stretch, but I want to sense that there's, you know, just enough that I get a release there, a sort of softening of the tissue along the side of my body here. I'm definitely liking my arm just kind of resting up on top, so I'm going to go for that today. Now, depending if your pillow is higher, you might need more support, right? Under your head or under the legs in some way. And we're going to hang out with this guy for about 4 minutes. If this is really, really, really uncomfortable, an alternative to this is to lie on your back and just sort of bend a little sideways. So you just make your little crescent one way or another. I like switching it up. So last time I did a yoga practice, I did that crescent shape on the floor on my back. So today I'm doing this one, but you can do whichever one is the most comfortable or appropriate for you. So we're going to stay for about another minute or so. I'm going to change my arm position. Since I won't have to hold it quite so long, I'm going to stick my arm behind my back because that provides just a little different sensation there. So take another deep breath here. And then we're going to slowly come out of this side. So essentially all I'm going to do is swing my legs up front so that essentially I can just push myself to a seated position. So I'm going to use my arms and just come up to sitting. I'm not going to go anywhere right away because I still feel like I'm leaning sideways in this, towards my right. So I am going to move myself to the other side, but I'm not going to fold yet. Just going to get everything settled in. Now you might be able, in your space, to just turn around and do it the other way in order to keep myself pointing toward you. I'm completely readjusting where I'm sitting. Oh goodness. I kind of wait for the sensation of that sort of sideways lean to go away before I take the next side. So I'm not going anywhere just yet. So I can still feel just the hint of it. It's just like my body wants to move in that direction still. So I'm going to wait until that feels like I'm really even. Oh. Okay. So often it takes about a minute for me to sort of iron that difference out. All right, so now I'm going to go over onto this side. And pretty much the same thing is going to happen, I hope. I hope I have enough room for my legs. We're going to find out. If not, then I will adjust again. Okay, so I'm going to find a position where that goes underneath my side waist. And then extend my leg out there. Try to create enough of a sense of balance. Just find all the little balance points. It doesn't feel like I'm going to roll forward or back. And then soften into that shape. So just locating like a little tension in my jaw, so I'm letting go of that. I just sort of relax around my eyes. My right shoulder is definitely a little different than my left, so I'm just adjusting for that. There's some little part of my nervous system that's concerned we're going to fall off the edge of this prop.
So I have to relax that part too. It's not real. I'm not really going to fall off, but sometimes like a pose can feel slightly precarious to your nervous system, so, or at least to mine. So when I let my body relax around that sensation, it sort of realizes that it doesn't need to hold on so tight. Stay for around another minute or so. So we'll take a couple more breaths here. Again, I'm going to come out the same way I did on the other side, where I'm just going to kind of swing my legs up front and then use my arms to get myself sitting up. Oh, nice and slow. All right. Now, the last thing we're going to do before our final relaxation is an inversion of some sort, which could just be legs up. So you can put your legs, if you want, you can sort of slide over to a wall so your legs can go straight up the wall and your back lies on the floor. Or you can lay down so that your back is on the floor and your legs go up over like the edge of your couch or the edge of a bed or something like that. Maybe with the knees bent, maybe with the legs straight. I'm going to do, because we're going to just hold this for a short period of time, I'm going to do a little version of like a supported shoulder stand. So I'm going to use this pillow underneath my hips. You could, if you don't have a pillow but you've got a yoga block will work too. These can be a little bit firm, so if you want to cover it with a blanket or something squishy, sometimes that's more comfortable on the pokey bone areas. I'm also going to have this blanket go underneath my shoulders so that there's a little softness there. So I'm going to set that up, sit on the pillow, and then put the other blanket down. And again, because I'm going to use this blanket, I'm going to smooth it out. I don't want there to be any wrinkles if I can help it. In there somewhere. In that bottom layer. Okay. All right. Again, it may seem like I'm being a little bit ridiculous, but I promise you will feel all the wrinkles. It's sort of like that Princess and the Pea story where she got into bed and didn't notice right away, but after a while she could feel the pea in the bed, the little lentil in the under the mattress.
I promise you're gonna be a princess in a minute. All right, so my hips are on this pillow and then my shoulders are resting on this blanket, and I've got a neutral chin. It doesn't feel like it's being, you know, my neck's not being tucked or forced forward. And then I'm gonna take my legs straight up. So this is a little, like, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of work here. So just to hold my legs up. So because it's not as long, we're not gonna hang out here for quite as long. I feel like I've got a little bit of permission to do that. So stay for a few minutes. And you could do this one too, or you could do one of the other ones that's a little bit more relaxed, where you can lean your legs into furniture or a wall. Now it's restorative in a way because I've got pillows holding my pose. I'm not having to use a lot of energy here, just enough to hold my legs in the air. Stay for about another minute here. Now, if you're doing your legs up the wall, and you're very, very comfortable or something, or up over the couch or something, and you're very, very comfortable, you can just stay, and that can be your final relaxation. I'm gonna, when I'm done here in another 30 seconds or so, I'm gonna push this pillow out from underneath me and let it rest under my legs and stretch out for a more, a corpse pose, a more traditional relaxation pose, if that's the right word. I'm not sure it is. So I'm going to start gently, put one foot on the ground at a time. So I have not too abrupt a change there, and then I'm just going to lift my hips and slide that pillow out. And I may take the pillow out from under my upper back. We're going to see. Right now it's pretty comfy, so I'm going to leave it, but if that stops being so, I will pull it out. Yeah. Sometimes it takes a second to notice. Okay, and then we'll just let the body relax a little bit more.
friends. Take a moment and notice your breath again. Take a couple of deeper breaths. As you're ready, you can stretch. Oh, move. Eventually, roll over to one side and hang out there for a little bit if you like, especially if you've still had your legs up. You'll definitely want to lay on your side for a moment. Oh. And then as you're ready, you can come to a seated position. So thank you for joining me for some restorative yoga. It's a great way to end the week. I think it makes some space for a new week to happen. Let's take a big breath together. Nice big inhale. And a sigh or an om. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the rest of your day.